Mostly on this channel, we talk about weird cars, fast cars, enthusiast cars, cars made for the car lover. But not today. Today we're going all the way to the other side of the spectrum. Today we're talking about the anti-enthusiast car, the perennial punchline, the guy in front of you in the fast lane going 5 under, the Toyota Prius. Why is it so disliked? Why do they sell so many? And has the new generation changed all of that? The answers to these questions are, it's an appliance, it's a pretty good appliance, and yeah, maybe. The Toyota Prius was the first mass-produced hybrid car and the first gas-electric hybrid of any real note. But it was not the first. The first was a Porsche, kind of. It was developed by Porsche, the guy, not Porsche the company. This was 1899, and while there were a few other gas-electric hybrids around that time, interest in the technology pretty quickly faded. There were some prototypes in the 70s and later on, perfunctory builds to feign interest in bringing down fuel consumption. Then, in the 90s, Toyota gave it a more serious effort, and in early December of 1997, the Prius went on sale in Japan. It had less than 100 horsepower, took over 14 seconds to reach 60 miles per hour, and got a rather uninspiring 35 miles per gallon. A slightly updated version of the car hit the global market in 2000, but it wasn't until the second generation that the car really hit its stride, getting nearly 60 miles per gallon in the city, selling over 1 million cars globally, and earning a reputation that was different.
Good for you! Thanks!
The Prius is entering its 5th generation, and in 25 years it hasn't really changed very much. The first car was a 4-door with an Atkinson cycle 4-cylinder engine, a small battery pack, and 2 motor generator units shoved into the transmission. The 5th generation looks different, and the plug-in version has decent EV-only range and over twice the horsepower of the original Prius, but the powertrain layout is pretty much the same. This is on brand for Toyota, a company that never strays too far from the tried and true. The fact that they were the first to mass market with a hybrid is still kind of surprising. They designed a new powertrain layout and have been iterating on it for 25 years. The car, at first, was new and exciting, but Toyota's focus on reliability and efficiency have made the car kind of boring. And the people who drive them have left the car with a bit of a stigma. There are 2 reasons that someone buys a Toyota Prius. One is that you want to save the planet, or at least hurt the planet as little as possible. The second is that you want really good gas mileage. The first group may be admirable, depending on your viewpoint, but not as admirable as they are insufferable. The second group is worse because they're in your way, slowing down all of traffic so they can get from 52 to 53 miles per gallon. The car gamifies this with a score on the dashboard, one that's pretty fun to ruin by repeatedly mashing the throttle and the brakes. Anyway, the reasons that someone buys a car like a Prius sort of makes for a dislikable person, and this brings out the haters who are somewhat dislikable on their own, and it just spirals out of control. You get the same thing with Tesla, exacerbated by the fact that it's run by this interesting personality. The Prius is good at what it does and totally unconcerned with making friends. It's the guy in class who always reminds the teacher that the homework is due. He worked hard on his homework, and he wants to turn it in. And he is oblivious to the guy behind him who didn't do the homework and is already late to a party that the Prius will never be invited to. But I digress. The Prius definitely has a stigma. Of course, we've all seen enough dudes with flip-flops and socks to know that the market of people who don't really care what you think about them is huge. This is why the Prius family has grown and continues to sell tens of thousands of cars, even as the perception of the buyer changes from environmentalist to another one of these f***ing guys. I said that there are 2 reasons why someone buys a Prius, but there are actually several. Yeah, it has low emissions and great fuel mileage, but it's also very reliable, especially if you get one made after 2010. It's inexpensive compared to similar cars, it's very big inside for its size, and thanks to the added electric motor, the service interval on things like fluids and brake pads is longer than most cars. It does what a lot of people want it to do for not a lot of money. If it were a toaster, it would be an excellent toaster. The label appliance gets thrown around a lot by people wanting to criticize a car for having no passion, no soul. It's just there to get you from A to B, it's just an appliance. But the truth is that most people are not car enthusiasts. Most people feel about their car the same way I feel about my dishwasher. I do not smile when I use my dishwasher. I do not feel connected to the dishes. I do not wake up early to do extra dishes with other dish enthusiasts. When it breaks, I will begrudgingly buy another one that does everything it's supposed to do, that does nothing it's not supposed to do, and that doesn't cost me very much money. And if water was $7 a gallon, I'd be looking for a pretty efficient dishwasher. Toyota is the world's largest appliance manufacturer. If they made a dishwasher, I would buy it in a heartbeat because I know it would do what it was supposed to do for a reasonable price until the end of time. This is not to say that Toyota does not make cars that people are passionate about. I love my 4Runner, and a lot of other 4Runner owners feel the same way about theirs. There's a big following for the Supra. At car shows, you'll see the 86, the Celica, the MR2, even the Previa. In fact, I would say one of the coolest cars ever made was a Toyota. Toyota did not have a whole lot to do with this design, but it does say Toyota on the back. Toyota is very good at making a car do exactly what it's supposed to do. When they decide to make an off-road capable SUV or a fast sports car or a budget two-seater enthusiast car, they do it pretty well. But they also do this with other less interesting cars. The boring sedan that will last until the end of time? Yep. The family minivan? They make one of the best. The family minivan for people who want to pretend they're not buying a family minivan? It's called the Highlander. The Prius was the first mass-market hybrid, but that's not why it's successful. The Honda Insight beat the Prius to the US market by 7 months and was much more fuel efficient, but that sort of faded out pretty quickly. Porsche's first car was a sports car, and they make excellent cars for people who love to drive. Toyota's first car was a passenger sedan, and they make excellent cars for people. They are good at what they do, and what they do with the Prius is make a practical, comfortable, fuel-efficient car for the dorky kid in class who just wants an A-plus car. And almost no concessions were made in practicality to make it look more interesting than a rolling fanny pack with transition glasses. But the world has changed, and perception has changed, and Toyota doesn't like change. They move slowly, but deliberately. Prius sales have been declining for years, and EV sales are real, so Toyota made a few very slight but important changes to the upcoming all-new 5th generation Prius. This is probably a good time to mention that I was invited to the Prius Prime Drive event by Toyota. This is one of those wine and dine events where they fed me steak and shrimp and booze so that I would say nice things about their car. By the way, don't trust any car reviewers. They're all being fattened up and sweet-talked by auto manufacturers. Except for me, I'm special and different and totally objective. The new car looks different. It looks good. People are using words like sexy and attractive. When I stopped on the side of the road, people stopped to check it out. Toyota did trade some practicality for looks. The new car has a slightly higher drag coefficient, but its total aerodynamic drag is probably less because it is smaller. It looks like the back seat might be cramped, but it's not so bad as long as you're shorter than about 6 feet tall and don't have sunglasses on your head. They let the design studio actually have a say, and they did some neat stuff, like this cut line back here. I always hate this cut line. It's always just there and ugly, but Toyota made it part of the design. It's a continuation of this line here. There's a hard crease on the plastic, a softer crease on the doors, fading out to this cut line in the back. You know what? I'm going to say it. It looks better than the Tesla. It does, and you know it. Toyota has traded a tiny bit of dorky practicality for a lot of cool. The class nerd is back with a new haircut, some self-awareness, and 220 horsepower. And yes, this is a pretty easy time to come to the defense of the Prius. This is the only time in the last 20 years where you can find most car people talking positively about this car. But that's because now it's kind of attractive to car people. Before, it was only attractive to everybody else. I'm using the word attractive loosely here. In the years since the original Prius hit showroom floors, the automotive world has changed. Full EVs are routine, and you can buy one with a battery that's over 100 times the capacity of the one in the original Prius. And Toyota keeps chugging along with hybrids, expanding their hybrid drive across dozens of vehicles. A lot of people are criticizing them for dragging their feet on going full electric, but they have their reasons for sticking to hybrid cars, and the reasons make a lot of sense. There are currently a handful of very large factories making high-voltage batteries for EVs, and there are a lot of lofty goals for going fully electric in the next 10 or 15 years. But to make that happen, there need to be way more very large factories making high-voltage batteries, and way more mines digging materials out of the ground. We are probably not going to be making enough batteries to switch everyone over to electric within the timelines dictated by places like California. Some people think we'll never have enough. The average person in the United States commutes 41 miles per day. You can't make a 41-mile range EV because sometimes we drive a little more than that, and some people always drive a little more than that, but usually just a little. But if you can make a 41-mile range EV that has a gas engine that kicks in at the end of that 41 miles, then you've solved most of the problem for most people. And you can do it for 1/6 of the battery. So if we're battery constrained, which we already are, you can do a lot better with 6 hybrid cars that operate fully electric most of the time than you can with just one EV. It's my opinion that the solution actually exists between an EV and a Prius, with a series hybrid that has around 70 or 80 miles of range and a small internal combustion engine that just charges the battery, perhaps a turbine-powered Dodge Charger. Honda would be a great company for this since they have lots of small engines and generators already. Mazda has something like this coming out in the near future with the MX-30R EV. Tesla is looking far to the future when all cars will be electric and self-driving and ugly. Toyota is looking to the near future, the very near future, and that might be more practical because you can't make a car for 2035 right now. If you do, you end up with yokes on cars that don't have drive-by-wire and products that are years behind schedule. I'm glad Tesla exists, I'm glad they're looking far into the future, and they make a lot of really great stuff, but the solutions they're selling are not the solutions for everyone, probably not even most people. The new Prius, specifically the Prius Prime, the plug-in version, has 44 miles of electric range. The electric motor alone has almost twice the power of the original Prius, and it doesn't look like it needs to get shoved into a locker. This solves a lot of problems for a lot of people, and it is a compelling alternative to somebody shopping for a full electric vehicle. Even people who do kind of care what their appliance looks like and how it drives. The Prius is great, and it always has been. It's always been great at doing what it's supposed to do. It just wasn't doing what you wanted it to do. Until now, maybe. Maybe not, I don't know. But it looks pretty good. It's pretty fun to drive. And while I'm probably not going to buy one for the first time ever, I did consider it. The Prius Prime is a praiseworthy production and probably passes the probing of passionate people pondering the practicality of pedestrian passage. Just don't park it in the passing lane. It used to be that you had to impress people to get people to watch your show. Now you just have to impress the algorithm. So do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. All hail the algorithm.